Huh? I don't know. Are you French? No. Okay, so why don't I have the right?
What is the right dependent on in Israel?
The automatic right is if you're Jewish.
If you're Jewish. And how do you find Jew?
Well, it is a secular country that has adopted some Jewish practices. For example,
how are you defined in Jew?
They define Jew according to rabbinical law.
Rabbinic law?
Hang on. It's a secular country, but for their status quo, for their base laws, they've accepted a few Jewish ideas, really.
The right to be a citizen in Israel is dependent on you being Jewish. Hang on. The automatic right. That's fine. Automatic right.
You can become a citizen.
No, fair enough. The definition of a Jew. Okay, you have two claims: a historical claim and a religious claim. The definition of becoming a Jew, all of the historic claims go back to a religious claim. What is a Jew? Where did you get the definition of a Jew? It's from the Torah, from the Tanakh. It's religious.
But it's still a secular country.
So you're using secular when it suits you, but you're based on religious definitions.
It's a completely secular country.
People like Ben Shapiro have mentioned this. We are religious Jews using secular arguments for secular people.
No,
so listen.
It's a complete secular country. It was founded by secular people.
Based upon religious definitions.
No.
Yes, religious definitions. The right to return is based upon a religious definition. A Jewish state, what is Jewish is only based upon religious definitions. So this discussion, this is why I differ with my people when they argue with Jews. This is not a political discussion. This is not a discussion on secularism or this country or that country. It's a religious discussion.
No, it's not.
It's a religious discussion.
It's a secular country founded on secular ideas.
Using religious definitions and religious premises.
They had to use some kind of definition. And there was a lot of argument, debate at its inception. For example, when the day of rest is going to be, what the symbols should be, what should define a Jew, etc. The various things that were...
And what did they look to?
Well, they looked for a lot of them. They looked at
where did they look to? Where did they look to?
They looked to history, to precedent, to the many Jews who came there, and after lots of back and forth, it was decided that these kind of ideas, who is a Jew, day of rest, and some other things are going to be decided by what the
religious
law.
law.
The religious
law.
However, these are just these things that were set at the time as the definition of a Jew. At the time, in the secular country, but it's still a secular country, secular ideas, secular government, and Tel Aviv is a completely secularist town. They don't apply Jewish law in any way, shape, or form.
How are the Jewish people that wanted to make Israel? Okay, what held them together? What bound them? Was it their DNA?
No, what bound them was shared history.
Shared history of where?
Of the Jewish people.
And how is that defined?
The Jewish
as a Jew is defined by the Bible.
The Jewish people are both a tribe, an ethnic group,
yes, and a religion. Yes.
So you can join Judaism, you can join the Jewish people, but you're also automatically Jewish. Now the Jews, having been persecuted and exiled in the diaspora for many, many centuries, they were a distinct tribe, a distinct ethnic group. So even though...
Based upon what though?
Well, actually at that point, for the vast majority of the founders of Israel, just based on their ethnicity, just based on their tribe.
But how was the tribe defined?
No, they were defined by the non-Jews. They're defined as belonging, as having been born from this group. They weren't Jew, they're not religious.
How would they define themselves? How would they define themselves?
The parents were religious.
I know. But they used religious definitions.
No, they used
religious definitions.
They used the definitions that all the other nations used.
Someone put it really good.
Said you were born even from a Jewish father, which is not in the Torah. Nazi Germany used birth. And this is how they were seen by all the other nations.
Was it so like a grandfather or something? Like you could have one grandfather and you were
that was in Nazi Germany, but that is not from the Jewish law.
But no, but in
so they were seen as Jews by all the other people. So therefore they saw themselves as Jews.
But how did they define themselves?
Again, they defined themselves as Jews because they were
based
seen as
upon
Jews
religion.
like everyone else. No.
No. Don't try and tell me that.
I am trying.
No.
You don't want to listen? That's fine.
That's fine. I'm not listening to that. No.
Great.
I'm telling you now that the definition of a Jew was coming from the mother, okay, was based upon religious law. This is how you know who's a rabbi, who's a Levite, and who's not. Okay?
Levites from the father.
Okay, but you know who the tribes are. The tribes
are from the father.
Okay, but the Jewishness is from the mother.
Yes.
Exactly. But you know your tribes, you know your Jewishness. Hang on. You know this
Tell me
from.
why Israel
Hang on.
is
You
not
know
a secular
this.
state,
You know this.
founded on
Hang
secular
on.
principles. Go back to that.
You know this from the religious texts.
And what's your point?
My point is that this is a religious discussion.
Are you saying Israel is a religious state founded on religious
No,
laws?
I'm not saying
On religious principles.
I'm saying that there are religious principles underpinning it, yes. Absolutely. When we see Netanyahu himself taking lessons and advice from the Lubavitcher as his main guide before he was in the UN, we know that this is a religious motivation. This is religious motivation. When he quotes Amalek, which is found in the Bible, knowing the 613 laws, one of them is to...
When he quotes a biblical
hang on.
verse that Israel is founded on
I never said that.
laws,
I never said that.
but
I said it's underpinning it. I said it's underpinning it.
Not even not underpinning it.
I'm saying it's underpinning
guided by
it. I'm saying it's underpinning it.
Israel is not guided by religious laws in any shape or form.
Listen, you admitted earlier that it is secular. When it's secular, but it has a religious. They use religious definitions.
There's some religious flavour. There's historical Jewish flavour. And there's more about history.
No, but this is what underpins it.
No, it doesn't.
It is, and I'm explaining why.
It's like saying that Judeo-Christian values underpin the British values, but Britain is a secular country.
Why that land? Why that land? Why Israel had that land when they've been offered Uganda and they've been offered...
Why that land?
Yeah, why that land?
Because it was a Jewish homeland for 1300 years, a Jewish kingdom.
Where does it say that?
We had it. History says
the history, and when you go back to the history is self-defined by religious texts. Hang on. That's fine. But we know now that when they've done DNA studies, the Palestinian Arab Muslim shares more in common with the Mizrahi Jew than the Ashkenazi Jew. How is
I don't think that's true.
This is DNA studies. Maybe you don't like DNA studies, but that's not our problem.
The Ashkenazi Jews are their closest relative is the Sicilians.
Anyway,
so we know that there were 12 tribes. There were lost tribes. Those lost tribes, they became enveloped into the surrounding tribes there. They never left. They're still there. They're the descendants. If you do the DNA of a Palestinian, he's going to have some Sephardic or some Mizrahi or some Yemenite. They're going to have...
The question is complex, and yes, it's a mix of religion and race.
Yeah. So why that land? Why that land?
That land is because it's a Jewish homeland.
And it's nothing to do with... Was it promised to the Jews?
It's got nothing to do with being promised.
It's got nothing to do with being promised.
If you look in the Declaration of Independence, it says very clearly, because this is where our whole identity was shaped.
When?
About 1900 years ago.
1900 years ago.
Our identity was shaped. We had a kingdom spanning 1300 years. That is a long time.
So do you believe that people
our
now...
identity was shaped. Now this was a secular declaration. God isn't mentioned at all. And in fact what is mentioned is we call upon the Arabs to stay here on the basis of equal citizenship, because they did not want to exile any Arabs. It's only the ones who wage war. They lost their
Do you believe now that people...
secular country.
Do you believe now that people who have maintained their identity for over 1,900 years but have come from a different place, do you believe they have a right to that original place? For example, the Irish. The Irish, they're said to be Celts that originated from Anatolia and Turkey. Do you believe the Irish have a right to return and right to claim the land in Turkey?
Is Turkey a sovereign country nowadays?
Turkey is, yeah.
Good.
It wasn't a cultural.
That
wasn't cultural. That was genetic.
Yeah, but why does it have to be cultural? Why does it have to be?
Because that's what the whole point of the declaration.
Also, hang on.
How? If the Irish, if the Irish, they're Celtic origin. The Celts are said to come from Anatolia.
Celtic is not one group though.
No, that's fine. But they're said to migrate through Europe from Anatolia. Do they have a right to go back to Anatolia?
It's not just Anatolia, it was actually also north.
Forget the semantics of it. Do they have a right to go back to Anatolia?
That matters if they're going out, not in Anatolia.
Turkey sovereign?
Do they have, Anatolia and everywhere else on the way?
Is Turkey sovereign?
Well, again, it's not their culture, so no, I would say no.
Is
Turkey sovereign?
Is Istanbul sovereign?
Is Turkey sovereign?
Is Istanbul is Bodrum sovereign?
I have no idea what that is.
Bodrum is one section, one area of Turkey.
Does it belong to Turkey?
It belongs to Turkey.
Okay, is Turkey sovereign country?
Turkey sovereign.
Great. Palestine wasn't.
Palestine.
The British mandate of Palestine, to give it its full name, was an administered area by the British Mandate, and before that it was a colony, a Turkish colony, and before that it was a colony of other countries, all the way back to the Roman colony, because it was always a colony ever since the Romans expelled the Jews. It was always a colony, never sovereign, because Israel, the land of Israel, the Holy Land, never gave itself away to become sovereign for anyone else. It was always an administered colony.
Where do you see?
It was waiting for
Where do you get this idea that Israel never gave away?
It was never sovereign.
Where? Israel.
You look all the way back to history. Ever since the Jews were expelled, it was waiting for its people to come back. It never became sovereign.
What?
Show me one time in history when it was sovereign.
So it was
always a colony.
So the Romans, when they had,
it was a colony, a Roman colony.
So the Romans controlled Israel.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a Roman colony.
Okay.
It never became sovereign. No other nation ever made its place there. It was always a colony of someone else.
That's not true.
Yes.
The Kingdom of Jerusalem during the Crusades. That was an independent state.
Really?
Yeah. The Kingdom of Jerusalem.
That wasn't that the Crusades.
Yeah, but it was an independent.
The Vatican, a colony of the
but
Vatican.
It wasn't a colony. It was an independent state. All right, it was a ruled by foreigners,
It was a papal colony.
So why do you believe the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem by the Romans?
Personally, as a religious Jew?
Yeah, as a religious Jew.
Because God wanted to expel us.
Why? If God wanted you in that land, why did He expel you? What have you done? What did you do?
Between us and God.
What do you mean that's between you and God? You're expelling people from their land and taking their land back? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Huh? Israel as a state that you're defending.
Expelling who?
The Palestinians. That were.
Palestinians.
What do you mean? No. Don't do this. It's happening.
this.
It's happening. There's no. Listen. What's known doesn't need to be said. What's known doesn't need to be said.
Palestinians are being
What's
expelled?
known doesn't need to be said. I'm not even entertaining your semantics. You're doing the lawyer stuff now.
No, I'm not.
What I'm saying to you is this.
Because that's where your argument stands.
No. So no, there's no fool.
It does.
Why were you expelled from Jerusalem?
It's irrelevant.
Why?
It was God's will.
What was it?
It's irrelevant.
Previously, when you were expelled from Jerusalem, what had happened? Was there some sin?
It's irrelevant.
Was there some sin?
Supposed to have sins.
It's irrelevant because this is where the crux of the matter is.
Not really.
The land that was given to the Jews was under the condition that you serve God alone and you submit to Him and you do not sacrifice your children, you do not sacrifice the false deities, and you put God first. What happened? The rabbis came, the Jewish people, they committed child sacrifice. Every time a prophet would come to them and say, stay away from child sacrifice, they killed the prophets. Okay, like Amos, like Isaiah, like I can't remember, there's a few other ones as well. Every prophet that came and told you, stop doing child sacrifice, you killed. And I will go on record and say, and demonstrate that if needed.
But the answer is correct or not is irrelevant.
That's the reality. Then, what happened? You began to take your rabbis as lords. You have in your Talmud, the Tandur of Akhnai. You know what I'm referring to?
Tanur.
The Tandur of Akhnai, where the rabbis said one thing and one rabbi alone said something else, and the bat called, the voice of heaven came down and said the truth is with that rabbi. The rabbis here said it is not in heaven, it is with us.
Yes.
So you believe that the rabbis have the authority to legislate law, and that God has no say in the matter. So if now,
God
hang on.
does that.
So if
That is God's will.
if God now said to you, if God now revealed to a prophet somewhere and said, I am the prophet of God, He gave you signs and miracles and wonders and all the evidences He needed to demonstrate that He is a true prophet of God, and that prophet said to you that this is the law from God, and it contradicted the belief of the rabbis, who would you follow? We know, but I just want you to say.
It was absolutely, if a prophet went against the Jewish law, which and by that
rabbinic law.
And by that includes
Rabbinic
law,
yeah.
that in itself is proof that he's not a prophet.
Okay, and then when I asked you
That
earlier,
proves he's not a prophet.
okay, and when I asked you earlier, what is the proof that the rabbis have the authority? What is your proof of your Talmud going back to Moses?
It's
Then
irrelevant to you.
then it's irrelevant. So this is the issue.
It's not relevant to you.
It is relevant to me.
Not really.
It is relevant to
Why?
me.
Do you want to become
because
Jewish?
no. I'll tell you why.
It's not relevant.
I'll tell you why it's relevant. Because when you claim something that is true as God would want it, you need to have proof. In your scripture it says,
I'm pretty
hang on,
sure that Israel is not claiming.
I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about. Remember,
I'm talking about me personally. I
as a
believe-
religious Jew.
I don't need to defend Judaism to you.
You don't need to defend it, because if you
Great.
did defend it, you would have no leg to stand on.
I do, but I don't.
No, you have no leg to
It's
stand
an
on.
assertion.
I know it. Don't tell me it's an assertion because you don't know what. That's
Look,
not.
you believe whatever you want.
You might have
No,
evidence,
that's
but
fine.
you
That's
say
fine.
that's an assumption.
I've looked at the evidence. The main evidence is for the belief that the Talmud and the Torah, the oral law, the halakha is